welcome back to the David67 Celtic News YouTube channel. Happy New Year to all of you as well. And for today's first video of 2024, going to be a quick rundown of rumours of players in and out at Celtic, and also a preview of this afternoon's match, 5 o'clock on Sky Sports at Paisley against St Mirren, which will be the last game before the winter break. So, a few rumours of players in and out at Celtic. Firstly, no definite movement on the incoming of Thiago Araujo, who theoretically is a left back coming in from Estoril. As from previous videos, I'm not convinced that Araujo is anywhere near good enough as a defender to come in and replace Greg Taylor in the way that Celtic play with a back four. Araujo typically plays left wing back or left midfield. Very rarely ever plays left back in a back four. And from all the various different scouting and highlight reels and internet searches, he looks an adequate but not good defender, and is much more dangerous in the middle third and the final third as a player. And so I'm not convinced that he would be an upgrade for Celtic at left back. As I mentioned, there are a couple of other videos and a scouting reel video regarding him elsewhere in the back catalogue of the channel. Scott McKenna of Notts Forest, who currently is banished to training with the youth team at Notts Forest, is said to be on Brendan Rodgers' shopping list as a centre-back. Scott McKenna is out of contract with Notts Forest this summer, and so would be available on a very low fee at this point, and would be available for completely free in the summer. As I said, he is currently training with the youth team at Notts Forest, having been banished by the previous manager Cooper, presumably due to disciplinary problems. He's played only 5 games with Notts Forest this season, and although McKenna was a pretty good defender with Aberdeen, has been a pretty good defender with Notts Forest, I'm not convinced that he is an upgrade on any of our experienced centre-backs, and so would be rather disappointed if Rodgers does go through with signing him in the next few weeks. The only bonus with McKenna would be the fact that he's Scottish, which does help with UEFA quotas, but otherwise, for me, there's no real positive factor in signing McKenna otherwise. Another rumour that was circulating in the last couple of days at Celtic's interest in Ola Solbakken, the Norwegian wide player, has been rekindled. It would appear that Solbakken's agent has been trying to tout Solbakken to a variety of European clubs. Celtic were interested in Solbakken 2 or 3 years ago when he was playing for Bodo Glimt. He ended up going to Roma instead, where he completely flopped, then has been loaned out to Olympiacos in Greece. Hasn't had a very good season at all for Olympiacos. Looked like a shadow of his former self, like he was when he was playing for Bodo Glimt. And my understanding is because he's already been contracted to Roma and Olympiacos this season, that he couldn't be loaned. He couldn't be loaned to Celtic or play again this season for Celtic. Again, I'm not massively sure that Celtic really need another player in that position, given the players that we have covering wide on the right at this time. Talking of players wide on the right and covering our potential problems through the middle in the striker option, Celtic are said to be looking at 24-year-old German player Nicholas Kuhn, currently playing for Rapid Vienna in the Austrian Bundesliga. Kuhn is a right-sided and left-sided wide player who also plays through the middle as a second striker. So he is quite versatile. He's played in the past for St Pauli, Hanover, RB Leipzig, and Ajax, and also Bayern Munich's second team in the lower German leagues. And a couple of years ago was transferred for $500,000 from Bayern Munich to Rapid Vienna. This season for Rapid Vienna, he has 3 goals and 7 assists in 22 games, and his career at Rapid Vienna over the 2 seasons, 7 goals, 10 assists in 51 appearances. So not really, for me, a man who you'd be convinced is going to come in and score goals for Celtic, with 7 goals in 51 being worse than 1 goal every 7 games. 10 assists in 51, again. Luis Palma, already in half a season, coming in late August, has, from memory, 8 or 9 assists. And so over the course of 2 years, 2 seasons, 10 assists isn't really the output you're expecting from a wide player. Looking at highlight reels, there is only one recent highlight reel for Nicholas Kuhn that I could find, which seen primarily his goals last season for Rapid Vienna. From the couple of minutes of highlight reels available, he looks like a fairly pacey player, only 5'6", 5'7", so kind of a Tilio clone, without the number of goals and number of assists that Tilio had in his seasons in Australian League, and not really got the same level of high-level experience as Tilio, who has played several times for Australia and is part of the Australian Olympic team and is jetting his way off for the Asian Cup to play for Australia. On that matter, it would appear that no matter how well Tilio does at the Asian Cup, Rodgers is already lining up getting him out of the club, either as a transfer back to Melbourne or Sydney in Australia, or possibly more likely a season-long loan back to one or other of those 2 clubs he's previously played for. Kuhn, for me, doesn't look like a real good option for Celtic. However, if Celtic do move forward with that player, I'll try and get more information and video of him and do a formal little scouting analysis video for him. In terms of players leaving, no definite moves out of the club apart from Yosuke Ideguchi, who seems just about on his way out to Vissel Kobe in the Japanese J-League for a fee of around about $870,000, which is what we bought him for a couple of years ago. No movement on players such as Siegrist, Barnaby, McCarthy, or Kobayashi. The rumours are that Kobayashi is going back to Japan on loan, and there are several clubs keen to sign him on loan, and there are also several teams keen to sign him on a permanent deal. And personally, I think Kobayashi would be better going back to Japan as a permanent sale rather than a loan. In contrast, the other player that Rodgers seems dead set on getting out of the club at all costs in the January window, Gustav Lagerbielke. I think he would be much better kept at Celtic to cover centre-back. If we look at our experienced centre-backs, assuming that Kobayashi goes off to Japan one way or the other, that would leave us with Nawrocki, CCV, Welsh and Scales. Welsh so far this season has played 4 games, twice as a starter, twice as a sub, and the 2 times he's come on, played from the start. Neither game has he finished. He went off with what looked like cramps or a muscular injury against Feyenoord, and then of course against Rangers at the weekend after about half an hour or so. He went off with what would appear to be a dislocated shoulder. We've got CCV, who doesn't seem to have fully recovered from his knee injury and knee surgery. He's had 3 spells out now this season with hamstring problems, out again currently with hamstring problems, which would leave us basically with 2 injury-prone centre-backs and 2 fit centre-backs, plus Lagerbielke. And if Rodgers gets his wishes, Lagerbielke will be away playing for another team on a permanent sale rather than a loan. There are stories that Lagerbielke may be homesick, which I find a little bit unexpected given the way that he appears to be well respected within the squad. Do remember very positive comments from players such as CCV and Hart and McGregor in the past regarding Lagerbielke. And for me, Lagerbielke, way better than Welsh. For me, better than Scales, right up there with a fit CCV and a fit Mike Nawrocki. He was the Swedish Defender of the Year last season. He is part of the current Swedish international squad, and for me, he did a fine job when he was thrown in at the deep end a couple of days after he got transferred to Celtic. Straight into the first team, makeshift back four, became even more makeshift when we played Rangers, and up to a shaky game against Feyenoord, where I think he was a bit unlucky in many ways. I thought was doing fine, 4 clean sheets with Liam Scales as a partnership, then for one reason or another seems to have been dumped out of first team recognition. A couple of appearances on the bench. I thought a really pretty decent 15-20 minutes against Feyenoord when of course he scored, but then straight back into watching games from the stand, with Nat Phillips having taken his place in the team and taken his place on the bench. Only bit of good news is that Nat Phillips is back to Liverpool and never, hopefully, ever to play for Celtic again. I thought Rodgers' loan deal to sign Nat Phillips was a complete disaster. He never settled into Scottish football. Didn't look anywhere near as talented as you would expect for a player who's played English Premier League and Champions League football. For me, slow, not quick thinking, didn't form a partnership with anyone else in the back four, and his performance against Kilmarnock was one of the worst performances I've seen by a Celtic centre back since the time of Douay against Clyde in the Cup and the couple of games that Raphael Scheidete managed in the John Barnes years at centre back. Happily, Phillips is away back to Liverpool, either to play reserve football down there or maybe go off on loan somewhere else. So hopefully Rodgers and Celtic will revise their decision to dump Lagerbielke out of Celtic, as I think we have got the scenario of CCV and Welsh being on the injury table, recovering from injury or recovering from surgery in Welsh's case, as was shown with Andy Robertson when he dislocated his shoulder on Scotland duty. He's now been out for the best part of nearly 2 months with recovering from shoulder surgery. Doesn't appear to be coming back to play for Liverpool anytime soon. So with a combination of CCV's recurring knee and hamstring problems and Welsh recovering from shoulder surgery, if that is the required option for his dislocated shoulder, we'd be down to 2 experienced centre-backs, then calling in one of the under-18 B team players, or bringing in Alistair Johnson from right back to be an emergency centre-back, or putting Tomoki Iwata into central defence, as he did do a few times last season. And for that reason, I think Celtic should be keeping Lagerbielke to go with Welsh, CCV, Nawrocki and Scales. Centre-back is a position where also suspensions and red and yellow cards are much more common, and so I do think Celtic do need to have good cover in the central defence rather than using emergency cover of Johnston or Iwata or one of the young talented B team players. One final piece of news, good news for Celtic, was that Kyogo wasn't called up for Japan for the Asian Cup. Only Daisen Maeda and Ryo Hatate were called up. Maeda was fully expected to be going off to the Asian Cup. Hatate was off to the Asian Cup, assuming he was fit. I do find it a little bit confusing that Hatate hasn't actually played for a couple of months, but has been called up to the Japanese squad. Japan are actually having a wee bit of a warm-up camp and friendly match before the Asian Cup. So it may be that Hatate gets assessed by the Japanese doctors and physios and may come back to Celtic by the time of the return from the mid-season winter break. That's purely speculation. It's just my thoughts given the fact that Hatate hasn't played for such a long time. And it may be that Japan feel, having assessed them in their warm-up training camp prior to the tournament, that it's too risky to have him as part of their squad in case he breaks down as soon as he comes on as a sub into the Japanese settled team. A lot of people were surprised that Kyogo wasn't called up. He has been kind of in and out of Japan's squad for several years. Of course, didn't make last year's World Cup. Did get back in the squad for a couple of friendlies this season, but wasn't in Japan's most recent two-game squad for World Cup qualifiers. And so for me, it wasn't actually that unexpected that Kyogo didn't go. Same way that I wasn't in the least bit surprised when Australia called up Tilio, because Australia knows how good Tilio is from his years in the Australian national team, the Australian Olympic team, and his very successful couple of years in the Australian League. Same way that I wasn't surprised that Jurgen Klinsmann called up Yang to go with O. Jurgen Klinsmann very much rates Yang as being a very talented young player, has got the flexibility to play right and left out wide, and can play through the middle as a second striker. And for that reason, I wasn't surprised, as some other people were, when Yang got called up alongside O, and when Graham Arnold of Australia called up Tilio for his Asian Cup squad. So, good news is that Kyogo will be available for us right through the second part of the season. He won't miss any games for the Asian Cup, and so does slightly cut back on the essential nature of signing a couple of strikers in the next transfer window. So finally, moving on to the pre-game preview of our game against St Mirren, 5 o'clock this afternoon on Sky TV, our last game before the mid-season couple of week break. Celtic do have actually a pretty good record against St Mirren. Last 10 games against St Mirren, 7 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. That loss being early in Ange Postecoglou's second season, rather than miserable 2-0 loss at Paisley. Our last game against St Mirren, of course, was a 2-1 win in November, on November the 1st, with O scoring a great winner in the 83rd minute. A game also in which David Turnbull missed a penalty shortly before half-time. Wasn't the best of performances from Celtic that evening, but at least they got the win. I think Celtic will win quite comfortably this afternoon against St Mirren. St Mirren in reasonable form, 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw in the last 5. They have dropped down from 2nd and 3rd down into 5th place in the Scottish League. And so I think Celtic should win quite comfortably this afternoon, and personally I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. In terms of the team, haven't seen any news of any of the knocks from the Rangers match keeping anybody out. So to the best of my knowledge, Matt O'Reilly will be fully fit and ready to play this evening against St Mirren. So my team for this afternoon's match: Hart in goals, Ali Johnston at right back, Novrocky and Scales in the middle with Greg Taylor on the left, midfield 3 of Bernardo, McGregor and O'Reilly, Maeda and Luis Palma out wide with Kyogo through the middle, Hopefully on the bench, Rodgers, now that he has no other option, with CCV and Welsh both out injured, and Phillips back at Liverpool, then Lagerbielke on the bench. We then also have potential impact subs in Hatate and Abada working their way back from injury, and also a couple of players who can come on and inject something different in O and Turnbull. And so getting back towards us having not just a good starting 11, but also players who can come off the subs bench and make a difference or shore up the game. And I do wish Rodgers would have, in the game against Rangers, done things to tighten things up when we were 2-0 up against 10 men and going into the 82nd minute. Instead, for me, he let Rangers very much back into the game using Mikey Johnston, Abada and Turnbull rather than using other options which would have shored up defence and shored up the midfield. Instead, Rodgers just let Rangers back into the game because he lost the coverage of Maeda and Palmer blocking the fullbacks getting forward. So we'll finish things off at that point there. For those who are new to the channel, do consider clicking that subscribe button. For all the new viewers and subscribers, I am amazingly grateful for all of those who joined in the Christmas period. And also, as always, delighted to read any kind of comments and opinions, and I'll do my best to reply to those. And a wee reminder of the daily quiz question, which today is a Celtic and related quiz question. So, finishing off there, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Good luck, Celtic, in your hoped win against St Mirren, taking us into the winter break. Goodbye, and hail, hail.
Yeah.